You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Wow. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Karibuni, asante sana. Thank you all for joining the Pan-African Daily TV today, live elders have taken up that space to begin to really go country by country to expose and to give us the original history. I mean, if we take 54 countries and the diaspora countries, I think in less than half a year, we will go around it. And so you Africans would be able to have on spot accurate information. I mean, I thought if we had started this even half a year ago, we should have been all already in the middle. But of course, today we are having a great teacher and an elder, and also, like I said, an iconic one of what I call the most rated, influential Pan-African speakers of our lifetime. Professor James Small is here. And today we want to talk about Eswatini, or Swaziland, as all of us know. How much do we know about it? The current situation out there has been very disturbing, though no other media outlet would carry it out. And because, of course, even if they carry it out, who is going to be the one speaking on your behalf? So it's always nice that we have our keynote speakers right here, accurate ones, and the ones that will tell us what we need to know about our history. So today we want to touch on Swaziland. Where is it located? The population, the history about it, and the current situation, the past, the present, and challenges and solutions for the future. Welcome on board, Professor James Small.
Thank you, Dr. Tata. I'm always honored to be on Pan-African Daily TV. I was getting a little worried with the connections, but I'm glad to see you today, dressed as my mother, Oya, in her wine color, burgundy. That is the color of what we call my spiritual head, my spiritual mother. And I, of course, am wearing my spiritual father, my red for Shango, and my red and my black for Eshu. And of course, the leopard represent the royalty of the southern portion of Africa from the Congo down. Yeah. So, and you can see the ancestors behind me, the elders and Shango and the others. But it's always good to be on the show, and especially to talk about history so that we can get rid of the white man's mystery. That's important to say. To talk about history so we can dispense with other people's mystery about our past.
Yes. Are you still connected? It's like you're broken?
Yes, I'm can you hear me?
Yes, it's breaking. Strange. Okay. Yes. I mean, I love the colors. I was really going to like, wow. I mean, these colors, it's not only Pan-African, apart from the green that is missing, but you can see the symbols. They're so strong. They're so powerful. They're sending out a message. And like I knew, I used to ask, now I'm start asking the dress code so that we dress in a color that actually would speak to our spirit and also arouse, the reason why we are representing in this manner. So when I just out of a sudden nation gist to me that you might be looking like this because of the topic, I also try to, combine some burgundy into it. And so everything is just on spot. Prof, did you see our new intro? And like the
it's
first
beautiful.
one.
It's very good. It's beautiful. It's informative. It's exciting. It's attracting. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, we did the first one when we just started, and that was just the time we did lost of the death of George Floyd, and we were so like. But now we said we're not talking only about the icons of the past, but we also have Professor James Small, Dr. Jeffries, Dr. Wade Nobles, and all of them, and commanding them. Marcus Garvey also was not on it. Malcolm X was not on it. All those iconic. So we really took time, invested, and to bring out a new what we call the Pan-African calendar and historical icons of our time. I know a lot of you that are watching, maybe you still have some that we actually have not touched, but we had to touch people like Steve Biko that we never actually were focusing on them. So if you have any icon, I know the professors will also be working with us to update this iconic historical image that we're having here. It's very relevant for the production and for our children as we are rewriting and recreating this story from us to us. So over to you, Prof, today. Yes, we want to touch on what?
Well, we want to talk about Swaziland, and with the new name, that he has given the country his name. Of course, the name Swaziland came from, I think, his grandfather, you know.
Mhm.
And so after he had his last birthday, if the people like this, it's fine. But this question of absolute monarchy is a
Yes.
very negative phenomenon. So let me go over the history. I just want to read the history of this people
Thank you.
and how we arrived at this place. And then we can talk about what's happening now in
Mm.
the country. So the history goes back. And according to the tradition, the people of the present Swazi nation migrated south before the 16th century to what is now Mozambique. Following a series of conflicts, though, with the people in the area of modern Maputo, the Swazi settled in northern Zululand in about 1750. Unable to match the growing Zulu strength, the Swazi moved gradually northward in the 1800s. So they're new to this land in the 1800s and established themselves in the area of what now is the present day Swaziland. And then they began to claim territory. They consolidated their hold under several able leaders. The most important was Mswati II, from whom the Swazis derived their name. Under his leadership in the 1840s, the Swazis expanded their territory to the northwest and stabilized the southern frontier with the Zulu. Now, they were able to stabilize the southern frontier with the Zulus because they made a pact with the British so that the British would bring the British army in on the side of the Swazis against the Zulus, who the British was at war with. And as we study and learn about the great Zulu wars under Bambata and under so many of the other great leaders, that Sechuweya, that fought with the Zulu nation. Well, this was all happening at the same time. And so the Swazis reached out and made an alliance with the British to help them fight the Zulus in order to consolidate the land they currently have. So the contact with the British came early in Swazi's region when the king asked the British authorities in South Africa for assistance against the Zulu raids into Swaziland. It also was during in Swazi's reign that the first whites settled in the country. Following Swazi's death, the Swazis reached an agreement with the British and South African authorities over a range of issues. One of the biggest was the gold mine. Swaziland had a major gold deposit, much of which the British have taken out and stored in their country to date. So the British and the South African authorities over a range of issues they discussed, including independence, claims on resources, meaning who would own the resources in the ground, the talcum, the gold, the diamonds, and now they've even struck oil. And so Swazi is considered to be one of the richest countries in the world. So why is 63% of your people living in poverty? That's the big question, and that's the root problem today. So the South African administered Swazi's interests from 1894 to 1902. The white South Africans controlled the country administratively from 1894 to 1902. In 1902, the British assumed control of the administration of the country. Yes, the king was the king, but the British ran all of its international trade agreements, etc. In 1921, after more than 20 years of rule by Queen Regent Labatsibini, the head of Swazi nation, that same year, Swaziland established the first legislative body. And listen to this now, the legislative body that was established in 1921 was an advisory council of elected European representatives mandated to advise the British High Commission on non-Swazi affairs. In 1944, this High Commission conceded that the council had no official status and recognized the paramount chief, or the man we call king, as the native authority for the territory to issue legally enforceable orders to the Swazi. So we've taken all your wealth that we want, so now we're going to let you manage your people as long as you keep them in check. The same situation we're seeing in South Africa today. So there was, at some point, they were worried about apartheid. So in the early years of colonial rule, this was the British being the colonizer of Swaziland, which is a landlocked country in the middle of South Africa. And so the British had expected that Swaziland would eventually be incorporated into South Africa. But after World War II, however, South Africa's intensification of apartheid and racial discrimination induced the British Kingdom to prepare Swaziland for independence. They weren't worried about racism. They wanted the gold and diamond of Swaziland for Britain and not for South Africa. So the British helped them fight for independence. So the political activities intensified in the years early 1960. Several political parties were formed, adjusting for independence and economic development in the country. So preparing for independence in Swaziland, the largely urban parties had few ties to the rural areas where the majority of the Swazis live. Now, the Swazi people is about 1.3 million people that lives in the country, with about 70% living in the rural area of the country, even today. The traditional Swazi leaders, including King Sabhuza II and his inner council, formed the Imbokobo, the national movement, and grouping in a group that capitalized on a close identification with the Swazi way of life. And responding to pressure for political change, the colonial government, meaning the British, scheduled an election in mid-1964 for the first legislative council in which the Swazi would participate. In the election, this new party, which the British backed with the monarch, this is not a traditional African monarch. This is a monarchy created by the British, okay? They may have tried to maintain the trappings of the traditional African monarch, and I'll speak on that later, but this is the British imposed monarch, which was an absolute monarchy where the people had no say, no right. And even with the legislative council, the monarchy could cancel or veto or dissolve anything he wanted without any counseling from his people. So in the election, this INM party and 4 other parties, most having more radical platforms, ran the election. Of course, the INP won the election because the British was running the election. These are the British people. They did incorporate, however, some of the things from the other party. So initially, they talked about having a constitutional monarchy, which is not that bad when you think of constitutional monarchy. And I was actually looking at some of the definition. But what a constitutional monarchy means is that the monarch don't have absolute power, that there's a legislative council of the people and there's a constitution which the monarch is obliged to follow. But what's happening in Swaziland today is not a constitutional monarch, which was voted in 1964. What you have today is an absolute monarch where the king can veto everything. So in 1966, Britain agreed to discuss a new constitution. Now, this is Britain discussing our constitution. A constitutional committee agreed on a constitutional monarch for Swaziland. But today we're not dealing with a constitutional monarch, you deal with an absolute monarch. And I'll give the definition of constitutional monarch in a minute. So with self-government to follow parliamentary elections in 1967 and 68, which never happened. So this king, Basiso, declared himself in 1968's constitution. On April 12, 1973, though, the king declared himself an absolute monarch, even though the people voted in 1964 for a constitutional monarch. And he dissolved parliament, he assumed all powers of government, and prohibited all political activities and trade unions from operating. He justified his actions as having removed alien and divisive political practice, talking about the Marxists and the socialists that some of the other parties lean towards, with the Swazi way of life. And the Swazi way of life was migrants who came from central, maybe the Congo region or the Kenyan region, down to this area in the 16th and early 1700s. And so the king, when he died in August 1982, and the Queen Zaliwi assumed the duties of the head of state. In 1984, an internal dispute led to the replacement of the prime minister and eventually replaced Nzuluwi by a new queen regent, Ntumbi. Ntumbi's only child, Prince Makhosetive, was named the heir to the Swazi throne. So now they've created a family monarchy out of having been appointed to power by the British. That's not an African hereditary monarchy that comes from the choice of the people, which usually give that role to a particular family who were the founding leader of their community and who was willing to live by the code of conduct, the protocols of that community around things ethical and moral and in service of the people. That's not what happens here. So he was named the heir to the Swazi throne in 1984, and an advisory body, and then he went forward, and the real power at this time was centered in Lekogo, a supreme traditional advisory body that claimed to give binding advice to the Queen. In October 1985, Queen Ntumbi demonstrated her power by dismissing the leading figures of the very body, the Legogo, that gave her the advice. So again, we're back to this absolute monarch where there's no one that can advise or direct or instruct that person. And that person is rooted in a family and is in control of all of the wealth of the nation and is the one that is the last signatory on all the documents concerning trade and the sale of raw materials out of the land of this nation. So there's been a call for democracy. So this Prince Makhosetive, the son of the Queen, returned from school in England, of course, to ascend to the throne and help end the continual internal disputes. He was enthroned as Mswati III on April 25th, 1986. Shortly afterwards, he abolished the Legogo, the Supreme Council that would advise him. In November 1987, a new parliament was elected and a new cabinet appointed. In 1988 and 89, an underground political party, the People's United Democratic Movement, criticized the king and his government, calling for democratic reforms. In response to this political threat and to the growing popular calls for greater accountability within government, the king and the prime minister initiated an ongoing national debate on the constitution and political future of Swaziland. This debate produced a handful of political reforms approved by the king, including a direct and indirect voting in the 1993 national elections. But that doesn't mean very much, and I'll show you in a minute. And although domestic groups and international observers criticized the government in the late 2002 election for interfering with the independence of the judiciary and the parliament and freedom of the press, significant improvements have been made in the country. In addition, the new constitution went into effect in early 2006. And the 1973 proclamation, which among others measured banned political parties, lapsed at that time. The king had imposed that ban on all political parties. And here's what makes the whole thing very weak and give this monarchy absolutely control. On September 21st this year, they'll have elections again, and over 500,000 registered voters in the country, formerly known as Swaziland, will elect 55 parliamentarians to the House of Assembly. Now here's where the problem comes in. King Mswati III, Mswati's powerful monarch, will appoint the remaining 10 to make the lower house of 65 representatives. Well, that's not too bad because he only gets to appoint 10 and the people elect 55. But then listen to this. The elected MPs will then choose 10 senators for the upper house where the main decisions are made, while the king will select 20 for the upper house, which means he has twice the control. And so with a wide range of power, allowing the kings to summon and dissolve parliament anytime he wants, there is no real parliament in the country, except it served as his behest. And so that is the root of the problem today. People want a real participatory democracy where the people have a say. 63% of the people in Swaziland live in poverty. So how do you rationalize as the monarch buying 10 or 12 or 15 Rolls Royce for your wives? You have your 15 wives and they're living in total luxury, able to travel anywhere in the world with you or without you, while 63% of your people live in poverty. And the strange thing, the arable land in that country is only 10.17% of the land that's used for agriculture. And it only produced about 8.2% of the GDP of the nation. Yet, 70% of the labor force work that land. Okay. Now, even, the forests, they have about 33% of forests covering their land. And forest and timber is a major industry there. Diamond is still a major industry, even though the diamond and the gold combined, they say now only account for 3% of the GDP. I'm sure that's what we see declared, And so they have talcum, they have other minerals that makes up the wealth of the nation. So despite the World Bank and International Monetary Fund devaluing the dollar or the currency, Swaziland is still considered to be one of the wealthiest nations in the world compared to its size, population, and the amount of wealth and raw material in its grounds. So why are your people suffering in poverty? And that's the question. This false notion of an African traditional monarchy is a lie, because this monarchy is established on peripheral fragments of traditional monarchy, but established by the British as an instrument that allowed them to rule and rob that land for more than a century without the people having anything to say. And then you have a pimp pretending to be the leader, calling himself the king or the monarch or whatever. He can enjoy all the benefits of the wealth, him and his prime ministers and his cabinets and their family, while the masses of your 1.3 million people, 63 to 65% of them are suffering. And so why are the people in the streets burning things down and burning down the property that the king owned? Why does the king even own properties and businesses in a country? So all of these are some of the sad reasons why a nation that has the resources to model itself after a Rwanda is much smaller than Rwanda, yet it has more wealth than Rwanda. Yet Rwanda puts it to shame in terms of what Rwanda is able to deliver for her people out of the resources of the nation. And in recent times, they have had petroleum strikes in the nation, and they've set a petroleum board, but that is all controlled by the same king and his family and friends. But whatever wealth comes from that petroleum will not go to the masses of the people of Swaziland. And that's why the people are fighting. The young people have no jobs. The young people have no future If you can't afford to feed a family, feed your wife and feed your children and own a house and provide medical care, what are you going to do? Migrate to another country and sell knockoff Chinese goods by the road, like we see in too many places in Africa? Well, you come from a nation that has extraordinary wealth. Only a handful of people with ties to Europe is profiting from that wealth. This is the classical model we're seeing in Swaziland today.
Whew. It is also actually reported, through this, the short research that we also did, that even one of the richest person on the planet, rated at the 38 or 368 richest person, is from Swaziland. And the investments that they're doing, they're like everywhere that we're shopping at our cash and carry. Swaziland is an investor, in America, in all this, even in UK. And
That's
then
called loaning African people's money for white people's use.
Exactly.
And they call it investing, and they get a little reward for stealing their people's money, investing it abroad to prop up Western economies that don't have any natural resources of their own, except what they could steal out of Africa and Asia. And Asia has consolidated, thanks to China and others. They're not stealing very much out of Asia anymore. And they're not able to steal out of India anymore. So Africa is the cash cow for Europe. While we live in poverty in the wealthiest real estates in the world, and wondering how we're going to even get medical care for our mothers who need just basic mammograms and other things. And the people we choose for our leader is live in opulence and luxuries and have homes in London and homes in America, and send their children to Howard University in Washington and to Cambridge and Oxford, while our children is begging to even be able to perform, to get the tuition for the university at home. Now it has to stop, but only people can stop it. And that God works through you. You can pray till the cow comes home. You're not going to have but some nice beef stew at the end of the day. If you want your prayers answered, you must carry out the will of God. That's the only way God's will is carried out, is through people who move in truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity, based on the African ethical moral foundation that we call Ma'at, or Iawapile, or Omanele. Whatever you want to call the harmony and the balance within and without, that should be reflected in a society. That is at the foundation of African communal, collective, and cooperative monarchies, where they still function. The monarch in the African tradition represents the ancestors of those people. When a king sits on the throne in Africa as an African king, they become the ancestors of those people and a full servant to those people, not a robber baron of those people. So don't put on a piece of leopard cloth or leopard skirt and carry a stick and say, I represent African monarchy. No, African monarchy is based on a set of principles, concepts, and ideas that is rooted in the humanity and the love of mankind for mankind. And the monarchy is not a ruler, but a servant to the people who's acting as the ancestors whenever they assume the throne. And that is that. And anyone want to challenge me whether that is true or not, challenge me. Because what we see in Swaziland doesn't even resemble the African concept of a monarch. That's a European thing. They put a lot of chiefs in place in Africa. And so, oh, you can wear your clothing and you can use your symbol, but the construct out of which you act will be European, where you and your family will profit. So we don't have to deal with the wishes of the people and have to haggle and give and take. We all come to you and make our deals. We pay you, you pay us. We go back to Europe and everybody's happy. Well, the people is not happy anymore. So they're burning, I don't want to use that word, they're burning things down. And they've killed over 25 people
I think 50
in the last week. It's gotten higher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do you murder your own people to justify why you went and bought all those Rolls Royce for your wives while they're starving? Because you can pay your mercenaries that you call an army to shoot their own cousins, their own neighbors, their own friends. Oh, the people ought to know. We know where the soldiers live. We know where their houses are. Stop it before the people render justice on you. Stop it before the people render justice on you. You were made a guardian of that society, not for one little hustler who can fly about the world and speak at the UN and pontificate like he's in charge of something, but you were given the guardianship as a military, as a soldier, to protect the masses of those people and that 1.3 million people who are your brothers and your sisters. Why would you allow yourself to be manipulated for a few dollars by this pimp and hustler who lives high on the hog, we call it in the West, wanting for nothing? And I'm told that he's probably not even in the country, that he's run away to South Africa, even though his prime minister said, oh, no, he hasn't run away. He's really here in the country. I don't believe that, because a coward will tell his troops to shoot his people. If you're a monarch, you're telling them to shoot your children, because the monarch is the father of the nation. So you're saying, shoot my children because they are in desperate situation, because I put them in poverty. When they protest my poverty, open fire on them. You're the father of the nation. You're the representative of the ancestors, and you do this to your people, to your children, and you want respect? You don't get a respect from me. And trust me, millions hear my voice, and they trust my voice. And you hear that millions have heard my voice. Yeah, because I'm an old man. Old people, I'll be an ancestor soon. And then I'll have to let Susan speak for me.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored. It's an honor, yes, of course, and trust that I'll do it.
But, and anything else is really a question about justice. This is a question about human rights. This is a question of self-determination of a people. It doesn't matter whether the tyrant is black or white or Asian. A tyrant is a tyrant.
Yes.
And when you violated the human rights of the people, when you violated the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of a people, when you violated the people's right to self-determination, when you violated their right to have access to the wealth that's in the earth that has been bequeathed to them by their ancestors, then you're a tyrant. And when the people say, I can't speak, you don't hear me, so I will now take to the streets, then you send the soldiers to murder the people who you're supposed to be the father, the guardian, and the spiritual light for. How do you murder them? And think as you throw around word like, oh, they're terrorists. You're the terrorist, Mr. Monarch, Mr. King. You're the terrorist. And the people will never let you rest. It's over. It's over. Either you make an arrangement with your people, or you will have to leave that land. You have stolen enough. Your family have stolen enough. You've squandered the wealth of that nation all over the world while they're trying to feed themselves with little food. Enough is enough. And as an elder of the African world, I don't care who agree or disagree. Even if I make some mistakes around the fringes, my detail is fundamentally solid. They're fundamentally solid. I spent hours reading and studying and trying to look at even the most up-to-date data on your nation. You're behaving as a criminal towards the very people you're to be the guardian to. But it's not too late. If you're truly a monarch, the father of the nation, then you take care of your children. And killing them is not how you take care of them. Sharing the wealth of that nation, making sure they have the best health care, making sure they have the best education, making sure there's job and work for them in that nation as a result of what you do with the wealth from that nation. Making sure they have decent roads to get to and for, making sure they have the most up-to-date modern equipment. You have the money, you have the wealth. Billions of dollars come back to you every year. Share that wealth with your people through all of the means you have to use. You did well when you had the gold refinery built there a few years ago. That was a good step. But you did that at the point where the whites have almost depleted the gold resources in the country. So they didn't fight you. They know there's not much left because they've stolen it. But you've got the timber industry. You got the talcum industry. You got the corn, the sugar cane, the rice. Okay. So use the technology, use that money and buy the technology to help your people create an optimum and maximum production in the agriculture sector. That will allow them to go home to decent housing. That will allow them to take care of their children's school. That will allow a man to take care of his wife and make sure she has the basic health care she needs if she's bearing children and so forth. Mm-hmm. That's what this is all about. This is not about symbols. It's not about ideologies. It's not about democracy or whatever. Africa had its own democracy from the beginning of time. Communal, collective, cooperative. We didn't have to look to the West for democracy. While people look at any indigenous African monarchical system and you see it all involve the people as the fundamental element of that monarchy, not the monarch. As I said, the monarch is the ancestors. When you sit on that stool, and one of my great teachers and big brothers, Nanakwaban and Ketsia, of the great kingdom of Esokado in Western Ghana, Western region Ghana, has made that clear to me when I sit on the stool as the monarch. At the Amenhen, I am the ancestors. And these are my children. And I am their guardian. That's an African monarch. And my responsibilities emanates from there. This thing that the European put where you can get some guns and some people and you can steal all the wealth you want and squander it with disrespect and disregard for your people. And because the European nations come and pay some homage to you while you give them the wealth of your people, you think you're to be respected as a monarch of anything? I hope my brother hear me, because everybody listens to Susan Tata. That's why they were messing with our show to start. So I know he hears me, and if he doesn't, his people hear me. You still have an opportunity to be a man, to be an African man, to be a monarch that's real, to be a king of your people. Submit to your people's needs. Apologize to your people for your abuse and for the scorn and disrespect you've shown them. And sit down with those parties and construct a government. You're talking, for God's sake, only 1.3 million people. You can't construct a political instrument that will govern their needs in that small piece of geography you have. If you can't do it, it's because you don't want to do it. It's because you don't want to do it. And so until you want to do it, burn, baby, burn. We had a record in the 60s, dum, 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 burn, baby, burn. Until they learn to let us earn, we will burn. Until they learn, let us earn, we will burn. So get angry with me. What are you going to do? I'll even come to your country. I am not afraid of anything on the planet Earth. except me. Sometimes I gotta be scared of me. Nothing else. And you ought to be afraid of the spirit that you see in the streets of your land that's coming from the youth of your country. That spirit that wants freedom, that spirit that wants justice, that spirit that wants truth and honesty. That is a spirit you're not going to be able to put back to sleep. Those young people have seen the world through this internet, through this social media, and they have to ask, why am I living in squalor and poverty when I have more wealth than any of those other people who are living in opulence? Your kids have seen the world. That Pandora box is open and you will never close it back. They'll never be blind anymore. And you just have to ride around in a car and wave your hand and wave the leopard skin. The spirit of the leopard ought to rip your tonsils out and not allow you to speak in his behalf anymore because you have profaned the symbol of the monarchy. And I can speak to you. Just consider, but who is this Professor Small? Consider that I'm a priest of the shrine of Hunefa, and I come from the order of Amun-Ra. If you want to challenge my authority to say whatever I want to say, you have to go and sit in the council of the ancestors and ask them your question, because I come from them.
Ashe.
The shrine of Hunefa, for those who want to hear, and the order of Amun-Ra. That should be clear enough. You to understand. The people need justice. There's still an opportunity to stop the death in the street of the nation. There's an opportunity to call the different parties together. There's an opportunity to say, let's make, no matter what mistake we've made, let's make it right so that our country don't dissolve into anarchy and chaos.
Ashe.
And just trying to survive. But you can't ask the people to just suffer any longer without any possibility of a remedy for them and their children. That's not even godly. And even if you're Christian, Christ came into the temple and turned it upside down, and he whipped the money changers. And the Romans arrested him for attempting to overthrow the government. Oh yes, he got arrested for sedition. Read your Bible. So don't teach people a passivity that's false. Teach them a truth. So people, if you're a Christian, move in the way of the Christian. Move in the way of the Christ. Follow the Christ. The Christ did not accept poverty. The Christ did not accept oppression. The Christ did not accept abuse of women. The Christ did not accept any of those things. So stand on that. If that's who you are, then stand on those principles. Because I know the church is very big in Swaziland. But don't be misled by the preachers unless they're standing with you as Christ would be standing with the people, not with those who shoot the people down in the street.
Ashe. Yeah.
But anyway, where do we go from here, Madam Tata?
Where do we go from here? I don't know. First of all, thank you. Thank you so much, my king. And I think you have the permission and the authority from the gods to speak on the behalf of the poor, of the voiceless and the needy. And you're so, so welcome. And anyone who speaks in the name of truth and love for the sake of the needy, I think you're protected. I'm not thinking, it is fact. So I know your ancestors are proud of you, your people are proud of you, and we all are also in protection of you. Yes, we all stand in that, holding hands together, like we say, or we sit at the cornerstone, listen to the king, but with all our blessings as mothers, as daughters, as sisters, as sons, and kings and princes of this golden continent, we say Ashe, and we bow down to you. Professor King James.
No, don't ever bow. I want to say, don't ever bow to me. I am you. One of the problems with how we view leadership in the African world today through European eyes The leader is the servant.
Mm.
The leader is the servant of the people. Anyone who served their people will not starve. Anyone who served their people will never be homeless because they'll always be open for you.
Mm.
There is no need, except in a false construction of consciousness, that today in the African world, any leader would participate in the exploitation and the robbing of the poorest of the poor.
Mm.
There is no need anywhere in Africa why we don't have adequate fresh water. There is no, we get the wealth. There is no need. There is no need why we can't buy the best sewage system in the world. There is no need. We have the wealth. We have the technology. We have the minds. We have a bunch of greedy, selfish, self-centered, thinking they're entitled people masquerading as our leaders. And the young people, my dear children, don't take it anymore. Take your Africa back. Take it back from the European, take it back from the black-faced European clones that sit in the seats of government in too many of our nation states. Not all, we have some people really trying. I'm so proud of Rwanda, with the majority of women in the parliament, which say what our mothers and our sisters can do when given a chance. I'm proud of Ghana, with the work that you've struggled to do. Even with the crisis in our Ethiopia, I'm proud that they're trying to sit down and work out these contradictions. I'm even proud of Congo. In the last election, the new government was able to move Kabila and his American handlers out of the center of the government of the Congo. So we know we can bring changes. We have to have the courage to do it. We have to believe in our people. All of us will die out of these bodies. You know, so what do you think? You're gonna drink all the wine in the world for eternity? You're gonna have all the sex for eternity? You're gonna live on all the silk sheets for eternity? No. You're gonna ride in your Rolls Royce? No. You will shed this body. So in this short period of time, why not just be our ancestors in the next stage? Who love you more than your mother? Who love you more than your father? Who love you more than your grandmother, grandfather, your aunties, your uncles? And so when they shed their bodies and we absorb their energies through our DNA, because we are them. When you give birth to your children, you give birth to yourself. When you were given birth to by your parents, they gave birth to themselves. We are a continuation of our ancestors. Let's act like it. Let's stop profaning our ancestors. To be Africans, to be eternally human and divinely constructed. That's our ideology. Not something born in Russia or born in China or born in the UK or Germany. We don't need that. We're talking about the most human of human. And even now in Swaziland, you can correct the contradiction. As of this morning, you're still shooting at your people. You shot at them all night last night. Stop it. Call a truce. If you can't handle it, ask some other neighbor nations, Mozambique or South Africa, to step in and help mediate the contradiction. Or you're going to lose everything. Well, you're not going to have anything at the end of the day. And your little army with their little pop guns, guns flow in all directions. It isn't just coming through your hands. But we shouldn't want to go there. You still have an opportunity to reach back into your people and say, teach me how to be your monarch. Teach me how to be your father. Teach me how to be your servant. And I know you will take care of me. That would be the African way. And people say, oh, that sounds naive. No, it's not naive. Poverty is naive when you shouldn't have it. Illness that can be avoided is naive when you shouldn't have it. Women still dying in childbirth unnecessarily when you shouldn't have it. Women forced to get abortion because they can't feed the 2 children they have and dying from the abortion. That's profane. That's evil. That's wrong. Stop it. That's the stop it. You have the right to stop it. You have the power to stop it. And other monarchs around Africa, the kings and queens in other kingdoms, you need to stand up and tell this little boy, he's acting like a little 18-year-old boy who was put in power. He's not acting like the representative of the ancestors of African peoples. Let the other kings of Africa sit him down or administer him a cup of tea to calm his spirit. If I was him, I'd be afraid to drink water, tea, or eat or anything from the people I oppress and abuse. How comfortable we make our oppressors.
It is just the time to speak up, and we're not speaking up in hate or against, and that's why we truly appreciate you, and you have all our support. Professor James Moore, particularly, you have my blessings, to be honest with you. Yes.
Oh, thank you,
yes, when we stand up for justice, not just justice like you say, for humanity, and we look at those evils in our hand and we weep our eyes away, also like collaborators or like monarchs. We have also one of the greatest king in the southern region, the Embo Kingdom, King Bongane, who is also one of those very noble, humble kings that actually just for humanity and the love for his people. I'm really honored to be a queen of the Embo Kingdom, and I've been going through these community projects out there, try to research how we can rebuild it. And it just dawned on me when we started seeing all this, and I had to reach out to his governor to find out what actually is the situation. I haven't been able to get in touch personally to get this information back, but I'm so grateful that you're on point and in time and place. It's time for us to call one another to order, and that is called Ubuntu. Prof, one question, because it's not in the construct of we are against, but we are speaking in the love and the unity and in the right way. Like you said, if you're a Christian and the Bible says, teach the children the right way so that when they grow old, they will not, or actually correct them when they absolutely go wrong. So we are not wrong to call out a wrong, but in the opinion to correct, to redirect, instead of saying we are scared or we would not say this because this would happen to this. I mean, the right approach is what you're doing.
When people have food to eat, when people have decent housing, when people have access to health care, when people have access to education, they don't riot. When people have their basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security met, they don't riot.
Yes.
So if your people are rioting, you must ask yourself, the leader, the fundamental question: have I delivered to them for their labor the services that would allow them to live an optimal and healthy life on a daily basis? How can I rationalize my profane spending and owning of businesses and this profane wealth while one person is impoverished, but let alone 63 to 65% of your population? Honestly. What is wrong with you? Hear me. What is wrong with you? You can only drive one car at a time. You can only swallow one mouthful of food at a time. Stop this profane thing that Europe has imposed on us. Our men are acting like we are the women for white men of Europe. They know what that means. I've said it in a pretty way. You're acting like you're the women for the white males of Europe. Stop it. And behave as African men, representative of the ancestors of our people, whose responsibility is guardianship, nurturing, instructing, and protecting of the future generations. Stop playing with these terms. I'm a king, I'm a man. You are not. That is a function. If you're not doing that function, you can't wear that label, and I'm not obligated to respect you unless the function declares your kingship, not a title. So the people, if they're hurting, you need to ask why. If they're in your streets protesting, you need to ask why. And find out what those needs are and work with them to service those needs so that they will go back to their homes knowing there's a future for them and having food, clothing, shelter, and safety. And you can go back to your home and assume the responsibility as the guardian of that nation to make sure the wealth of that nation is used for the people of that nation and is not squandered by a few. That's really it. What else can you say? What else can you say? Are you going to say you're referring to them as being, in a speech a couple of days ago, the king referred to his people as being satanic? Are you serious? Do you know what the word satanic means? Have you looked in a mirror lately? They are called the hungry and the homeless in the land of wealth that you live in satanic because you've stolen their wealth and their opportunities and their dreams away from them? And they're satanic. You are the satanic one. Look in the mirror. And all those little devils that surround you that you think represents beauty, push them away for a minute. Look in the mirror and see what kind of man you are, African man. You know? Because maybe you are satisfied just having the former colonizers and the former apartheid chief and the former genociders acclaim who you are, then fine. Then the people will burn until you listen and you learn. And there's nothing you can do to stop them because you made the mistake and you spilled their blood. Once you spill their blood, you've given them martyrs, and they will not rest because you've martyred their beloved ones. Now you're in trouble. You need to put those guns down and talk to your people.
We talked, Prof, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to connect with Reverend Dr. Ninana Kweku. Yes, that was a big number. And actually, he talked about this, what you just said recently about communication. It is more easy. We have left that communication. So we use tools and weapons and other things as a communication tool. That's just what you're saying. Put them down, talk to people. We are people to people.
We're talking about a nation that has an enormous amount of wealth for its size. We're talking about a nation with 1.3 million people, and you got 63% in poverty. It doesn't make sense.
No.
You would be even more wealthy, and we'd be treated with even more honor and reverence if you raise those 63% out of poverty and ensure that the track to poverty never exists again in your nation. And you've got lots of models to look at. You can look at certain aspects of Tanzania. You can look at certain aspects, certainly of Rwanda. You can look at certain aspects of even Mozambique, who has struggled to come out of a very difficult situation. You can look at certain aspects of Ghana. You can look at Congo Brazzaville. You can look at Equatorial Guinea, who have its own issues, but how they're using the wealth. You can look, there are places where people are really trying to move their people out of poverty with the wealth and resources that's in the ground. You could still take a vacation if you want to go to the French Riviera and be with the albinos. That's your thing. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I don't want to be with them. But if that's what you want to do, you can still do that and take care of your people. You don't need to die like a Mobutu and leave billions of your people's dollars in a European bank that never gets repatriated back to the Congo for our people after having killed hundreds of thousands of our people, to steal all of that wealth. It'll catch up with you. Mobutu had to go. There are others like him that had to go. You will have to go. If you don't stop and think and tell all those that are in your ears to shut up. If you want to really be a monarch, tell them to shut up. And you go to your shrine. And you go to your shrine to your ancestors. And you go to your shrine to your divine. And you ask for advice and direction. And you meditate until you get it. If your intentions are right, your guidance will come.
Mm-hmm.
If your intentions is not right, the people will continue to burn. And they're justified in doing so. They're justified. So.
Okay. I think we would just open up the lines, take a short break, and take some questions or some recommendations or some comments, not just recommendation, to share our opinion on the breaking situation out there in Eswatini. And it's very, very important to understand, like we say, it is not about just a justice for a democracy, but it's also about a monarch that is a king of the people, of the nation. And particularly
it's about a method. It's about a method of governance that allowed the people their role in governing their lives. We could call it anything we want to call it, but it should be a method of governance that allow the people to have a say in how they govern and how the wealth of their nation is apportioned on their behalf. We have many models in the history of Africa. We built multiple civilizations and multiple kingdoms, and thousands of our books are in libraries all over the world. The museums of Europe are full with the artifacts of African civilization and African kingdoms, with our literature, our sculpting, our marble, our everything. Matter of fact, if you take everything African that comes from African-built civilizations and African-built kingdoms, Europe can close all of its museum down and maybe need one for themselves, because everything else in the museums belong to us. So what is wrong with us? We've fallen in love with an illusion. We're imitating a hologram of a human being. And we have murdered the very essence of the divine. That is the image of our ancestors that's embedded through the DNA in each and every one of us. And that's not mythology. That's about as science as you can get. When I gave birth to my children, I gave birth to me. And my mother and father gave birth to me. They gave birth to themselves. And they had been given birth to by my grandparents, who had been given birth to by my great parents. I am all of them. And I can walk anywhere, and I have a whole army of them that walks with me. And you do too. This is nothing just for me. So why don't we come back to an African way to solve our economic, political, and cultural problems? There's no reason, if the table is full of food, and there's seat for 20, and there's only 2 sitting at the table, and 18 is in the corner starving. No, if there's seat for 20 at the table and there's sufficient food, have everyone sitting at the table ingesting the food for the nutrients of their life.
Mm.
Food, clothing, shelter, safety, security. That's what struggle is about. Those people are in the street because you've taken away their opportunity to have food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. And so they're insecure. Their hope is gone. Their dream is gone. And so they're striking out now because they can't take suffering anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Prof, you said something in, I really want us to, or maybe you lecture us on that again. The word fatherhood or motherhood. Which father actually would do that to a child? Because that's what Africa really represents. It's not because, okay, we are divided. We are one people. But which kind of a king or a father would do that to a son, to a daughter, to a young people? If you look at the rioters, they are grandchildren or sons and daughters. They are not even the elder. I mean, you look at the generation that is on the street. They're your own children. Who would do that?
The ignorant, the greedy, the selfish, the arrogant, the envious, the insecure. That's who would do that. And we have so many people standing in front of us whom the colonialists put in power or put their families in power as they were moving out of Africa. And we've got these insecure, colonial created family trees that think they are entitled to rule over someone because the former European master put their grandfather in position to do so. Well, we're here to tell you the jig is up. Time is up. Okay. But those brothers, and I know you're there, you know you're in Swaziland, you know you stand on the square, you had to tackle the Jubilee, Jubilam, and Jubilee. So why are you tolerating this misbehavior? Why are you tolerating this misbehavior? When you say you were made into this thing in your heart, is where you first became this thing. And you are in the leadership. So why are you tolerating this injustice? If you're the symbol of the builders of the temple, if you're the heir to the throne of those who reside in the temple that was built by the wisdom of the ancestors, and you hear me, you know what I'm saying. The masses don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying. Why are you tolerating this profanity? So the word's out there. Do what you want to do with it. But God will not tolerate it, and so he sent the children into the streets. And you can't send them back home except with justice. You think because you can kill a few of them, you need to go to Haiti and ask why the streets of Haiti have been filled every day for the last 2 years. They kill them every day, but they come every day. The Western news don't carry it, but they come every day in the spirit of Dessalines. They come every day in the spirit of Christophe. They come every day in the spirit of Défilé. They come every day, you know, in the spirit of Fatima, Cecilia. And they will come every day in your land in the spirit of every one of the ones that you've killed. And those ones that you've killed will grow into greater martyrs and greater martyrs until you crumble unless you stop right now and find a way to sit with your people without trickery or treachery and resolve the contradiction of how people get food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security, because that's what this is all about. Resolve the contradiction of who's going to control the economic, politics, and culture in Swaziland. Is it going to be one man and his 15 wives? Or is it going to be the 1.3 million people who own that land? You know, that you should be honored to reside over on their behalf. But instead you shoot them down in the streets and call them satanic. You know, I'm calling you on that. And trust me, by tomorrow, hundreds of thousands will hear this speech. And there'll be nothing you could do about it. And by the next day, hundreds of thousands more will hear it. And they will judge you. Wherever you go in the world, you will not know who the judge might be for the crime you've committed against humanity, against your own children. You've had your army shoot them down in the street like dogs. And all they were begging for was a little food, a little clothing, and a little shelter for themselves. And for that, you shoot them down in the street like dogs. And you think the ancestors are going to stand idle and let you continue. That's not going to happen. You're so silly. That's not going to happen. People, the jig is up. The ancestors will have, they say, through their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. That's who's in the streets. You don't have to teach them. The ancestors will teach them. You don't have to give them courage. The ancestors through the divine will give them courage to stand up against your armies. And you will lose. And they will win. But we can all win and not have one more death overnight or today. And sit down and have peace and in honesty and truth determine we will work it out so the equitability of the needs of the people is brought to fore and the wealth of the nation will be put forward to address that. Not that complicated. Greed keeps you from letting it happen. Insecurity keeps you from letting it happen. And your European masters pull your strings like a bunch of puppets. A little vaudeville puppet show in your nice European suits and ties. And when you get scared of the people, you run and you grab some leopard cloth and you dance a little bit to some drums to fool them. The people are not fooled by your illusions and your pretense anymore. So either you come real or you don't come at all. I hope this is simple enough for the young people.
It is simple. It's very simple and direct to the point. I mean, with the love of a brother and a king talking to another king, I think you both understand this very well. We are sitting down right at the fireside in the countryside, in the village, listening to the elders. And I think it is just in our spirit or in our way to correct one another or to call one another to attention. Now, but if you look at this attitude, that's what I'm saying. This greed, this southern greed. I'm still working on the research to see in the ancient African time, where does this greed come from? And when we talk about self-love, this is absolutely what we're talking about: self-hate, the greed to amass everything and to put yourself. And
well, it's very clear. When he returned home to the monarchy, he returned home from having been educated in Britain. You want to know where it comes from? It comes from the mind of the colonial masters, whose entire existence have been about wars, robbing, and taking from other people. Europe has no history that doesn't involve invading someone else's land, murdering, raping, pillaging, plundering, and taking the wealth. And those people of those lands, Blacks and Asians and others who have been taken back to Europe and educated and sent back to rule over us, come as them. We're looking at Europeans in blackface. That's what we're dealing with. They look Africans, you know, but they're not. Their minds have been constructed by a European worldview, a European philosophical perspective, a European notion of reality. And the European worldview have been that of exploiting anything African, murdering and plundering anything African. So if you take that worldview, you're going to do what that worldview dictates, even though the people look just like you. So let's not lie to ourselves. We know where there's nothing complicated about why these thieves and these brigands are running on our nations pretending to be leaders, and they can't even lead their own families. They can't even lead their own children. You know, what are these? These are clones of the European poor imitation of what he thought was an ancient African way of constructing civilization. So if you're a clone of a poor imitation of your grandparents, you're really in trouble. And that's what we got. Europeans in blackface.
Poor imitation of your...
Huh? And people always say like, oh, you African American, how dare you? Well, let me tell everybody on the continent of Africa, as I often do.
Yes, go ahead.
I did not give up my birthright. I did not leave home voluntarily. I did not give up my stool. I did not give up my skin. And I did not give up my land.
Yes.
And so if you want to see my spirit, it's more powerful than you think. Don't confuse me with the white people in blackface that live in America, because I'm not one of them. Okay. I'm not one of them.
We just for our viewers, there's been a lot going on. Particularly, I'm talking on we're setting up a professional court from Professor James Small. I mean, we've been doing it on the other speakers as well. And so if you go even now, we have quote from Maponga Joshua. It's the Pan-African Daily doing that. Now we're also starting to put quotes on Professor James Small, because you just said something now, and I'm trying to every of that quote that the black imitation of the clone. Am I right?
Yes. No. We are imitating. We have become the clones of a poor imitation of our black ancestors.
Clones of a poor imitation of our ancestors. Okay. Wow. That is...
I mean, like, you know, here we are. The only time we invaded Europe was during the period after the 8th century with the Umayyad Islamic Empire that was being taken over by the Abbas Empire, and they ran to West Africa for sanctuary. And the Africans who lived in that area, who they called the Moors, helped them invade Spain, not because they wanted anything for Spain. Spain had nothing of significance to really offer, but we had been invaded in North Africa from Spain by a group of Germans called the Visigoths. People forgot them. So we drove them, most of them, out of North Africa. You know why North Africa is all white-skinned today? It isn't just white-skinned because of the Arabs or the Turks that came after the 800s, but the Romans had invaded us. The Greeks had invaded us and raped and plundered our women. And then the German Visigoths coming to Spain. So when we went into Spain in the 800s and stayed until the 1400s to cleanse the filth of Europe, they didn't even know what soap was like. If you think I'm lying, there's a book, it's called Dirt, D-I-R-T, Dirt. I forgot the author, but just put it in, Google Dirt, the book, and see. The Queen Elizabeth, the old Queen Elizabeth, they had to chisel the makeup off of her face when she died. It was almost a half-inch thick, because they didn't bathe, they just put powder over powder over powder. So we went there and taught people how to take bath. And we built bathhouses all over Spain for the public. And we taught them how to use soap. And we opened the first universities for them. And we took them the first medical book. And we took them the first surgical book. I know who we are, and I know who they are. History will erase the mystery.
Professional quote from Professor James Moore, of course, history will erase. That's the first quote that we're opening that. Those professional quotes with, of course. Oh my goodness. Yes. I like that. This one, I know them and they know me. I mean, that's all about history and what we need to know. So you say we can go
extraordinary people. We just have to build ourselves as ourselves. We got the wealth. There should be no poverty in Ghana. But all that gold, the oil, the diamond, which no one talks about in Ghana, the manganese, the bauxite, the citrus, the timber. Why is anybody standing side the road selling knockoff Chinese plastic goods? Because somebody don't know how to govern the wealth of the people. Because they're too busy trying to see how much of that wealth they could take for themselves. But not just Ghana, every one of our nations. The African Union is nothing but an illusion of a unification of nations. An illusion, a pathetic illusion. How could you have all these people? They have degrees from Harvard, Cambridge, Yale, Oxford, Princeton, and they're sitting and at us like a bunch of little children, not knowing how to zip their pants down. Get angry with me if you dare. And then I'll show you what you haven't done for your people. And forget about the Francophone states. That is the most pathetic array of leadership I've ever seen. And whenever someone has stood up from Togo to Burkina Faso, the French didn't just murder them. They got the sanction of the Negro black face in those countries to help them carry out the murders, to the tune of 26 of the leaders of those states in the last 50 years. You know? No other country in the world have murdered more of its presidents than the United States of America. But people don't know that. America assassinated more of her presidents than any other nation in the world. But they confuse you with their democracy fantasy and get you to bickering over trying to take a failed system that has never worked in America and employ it in Africa. You think it's work in America? Come and ask the 60 to 70 million Africans who live here if it has ever worked for us. And we built this country. We built it. And we've saved it over and over, trying to make it into something better. And it still hasn't worked for us. And we're trying to imitate this. You better turn to your ancestors. You better learn your history. You better study your culture before you go and call European ballet classical dancing. You better go and figure out which African dance form you want to call classical before you call some violin playing group out of Vienna classical music. You better find out what African classical music really is and stop defaming yourself. Be free or die. And since everybody's going to die anyway, I'm not even trying to die. I'm just trying to be free. The dying is going to take care of itself. To be free, I got to take care of that one.
I hear the comments and I see people really saying yes. Yeah. This is deep.
But let's just come back to Swaziland for a minute. You know, the situation there is dire because the young people are still in the streets. And last night they had a terrible night. A number of them were killed. And the gunfires went on throughout the night and into the morning. And the leaders are talking about, oh, we have set up a website where you can air your grievances. Are you crazy? You're past that. a website for me to air my grievances, that won't work any longer, Mr. New Prime Minister. You have to sit down and talk to the leadership of all of these different political groups and churches in your society who are leading these people. You're not going to be able to stay in power. Forget it. You think you can continue to stay in power, treating people like this? Now you've killed their babies. And you think you can stay in power by talking about you have set up some email or something for someone to air their grievances? Have you lost your mind, or did you have a mind to lose? You know how stupid that sounds. I'm saying, when I heard that today,
I mean,
like,
63% living on poverty. Why would they even have the bundles to write an email?
Right. But to be serious, you got people dying in your streets. Your country is in flames. And you're going to say, we've set up an email so you can air your grievances. You don't have to do it through demonstrations. You better put a few more soldiers around your house, because they're coming for you. It's over. It's over. And young people all across the African world, get in touch with the young people in Swaziland. Give them your support. Tell them you love them. You know, if there's a way you can send money to them, send it. It's time to say enough is enough. If all you can do is put something up on the email supporting them, on Facebook supporting them, on YouTube supporting them, put something up. Tell them right on, straight ahead. You know, right on, straight ahead. Freedom or death. Freedom or death. That's our mantra. We don't have to be enslaved by anybody. Black face, white face, yellow face, no face. We are not to be enslaved by anybody, by no false god, false religion, or nobody. We are African. We are made in the image of the divine universe itself. We do not have to submit or subordinate ourselves to anybody, except in a form of justice that helps everybody. Now, if you don't want that, you better get out the way, because guess what? It's coming. And it's going to be coming for you if you're standing in the way, playing that false Western democracy while you rob and plunder the wealth of the people. Your time is up. If you don't like Africa, pack your bags and go to your little summer home in Europe or America, and leave the people of Africa alone. Let them build the Africa that they want to see, and they can build it quite well without you exploiting them. It is as simple as that. Correct. And if they don't let us do it, let's do it anyway. Let's do it anyway.
Ashe. Ashe. Thank you so much, Prof.
Does this mean I can't come and visit Burundi anymore? I can't come to Swaziland? Oh, hey. You may wake up one day and I'll be knocking on your door and say, hey, King, let's talk. Because what you're doing is not just wrong, it's foolish. It's almost childish. Anybody can script it into a little TV movie. Be a real king. Your people is hurting to the point they're burning your country, to the point you have to murder them. Be a real king. You tell your soldiers to stand down with those guns. You be a real king. You tell your people, send your representative. Let's see how we resolve this. Be a real king. Then you wouldn't have to worry. The people will love you. The people will take care of you.
Correct. Protect you in any case. I think it's a way of showing that we're angry. So if children will riot, why don't you call them to the table and find out why would you use something? So you're so
no one should stay hungry when they don't have to be hungry. No one should be homeless when they don't have to be homeless. No one should do without health care when they don't have to do without health care. No one should live in a situation where, and Swaziland has a big reputation of abuse of women. No woman should have to live in a place where she's not safe. as a woman from the abuse from males, without the protection of law in advance of the abuse. Now let's stop playing. Most of this stuff can end like that. But we want to play the European little game. Or we'll set up a commission, or we'll set up a group to study this. No, you better do this. Zora Neale Hurston said, to be there, you got to go there. But to go there, you got to know there. And if you don't know the African place of truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity, then you better learn it, because you can't get there unless you know there. And what you're calling for requires you to be there. But if you don't know there, you can't get there. You better start learning real fast, or it'll get to you first, and it won't look pretty.
Anyway. How are we going to learn? When are we going to learn this? I mean, like you use the clear example of Mobutu. I mean, look at how you end. And sometimes you really ask yourself, why would I be different living in all these illusions of luxury when I'm going to pass away as a single, lonely, poor man? Not even any soul to bury.
And left your people's wealth to the white people of Europe in bank accounts that they have taken and squandered. They did not give that money back to Congo and the people of Congo. Instead, they've come in with their guns and their weapons and armed all these different groups to fight one another so that they can continue to steal the wealth unabated. You know? And so it needs to stop all over Africa. And if they could, in Swaziland, set an example, set a model, how the king, the monarch, and his minions, who he calls his advisors, because any man and woman that advise you to pull a trigger on your babies is minions. They're not men and women. And they should be hunted down and put in prison for the crimes against humanity that you've just committed in the last 72 hours. But we might even allow you to be forgiven that crime if you come to the table with your people and resolve the contradictions that they're faced with and you're faced with. That's doable. And if you're afraid to do it, because you're afraid they may punish you for the crimes you've committed, then reach out to other nation states, your neighboring states in the southern sector, to call the meeting on your behalf. But the pathway you're going now with your guns is not going to work. I can tell you that all the way from New York.
Great advice. We've all heard it. We've all listened to it. And our job is to make sure that we reach out to the 1 million, 1.4 million Swaziland, the monarch and everything. So we developed the speech. The advisor is there. The collaboration is there. The unity that we're talking about is there. The voice of the Africans of raising. Our work is just to click and share and make sure this message gets to the right quarters. It's all about the development of us and our people. And Prof, it is a wonderful pleasure.
It always is.
I know we really have had this. We've had this. We are really fed. Nobody's going here again with the notion of not knowing. I mean, sometimes we talk. The thing that we like about you is that fairness in saying evil is evil. It doesn't matter whether it comes in a black face or purple or green. It is evil. And anything that doesn't work in the interest of the people, even if it comes from the African. So I think that's the difference when people say we're being defensive or you're being. No, it is even just calling that injustice among us as a demon. So that's fair.
No, it's simple. I always talk about the same thing. All struggles is about food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. All struggles on behalf of people. People are struggling because they want food.
Yes.
People are struggling because they want clothing. People are struggling because they want housing. People are struggling because they want to be safe. People are struggling because they want to feel secure. That's universal. Okay? But you can't have that unless the people is in control of the economic, the politics, and the culture in their nation state. And that means you must have a representative government that allow people to have the input necessary for you to know what their needs are. And that you can create the instruments to address those needs. You know, that's the reality. How are you going to tell me we are the greatest people in the world and we got the greatest history in the world and we got the greatest culture in the world, and you can't build a healthcare system for a village? Give me a friggin' break. What's wrong with you? You leaders. Cuba has given you the model. Cuba has more doctors in Africa than almost all the African nations put together. What is wrong with you? One little depressed island in the Caribbean, blockaded by America with sanctions for 60 years, can still send more doctors to Ghana than Ghana can produce. What is wrong with you? To Nigeria, to Angola, to Namibia. What is wrong with us? Cuba has been cited for most of the last 50 years of having the best healthcare system in the world by the UN and other bodies. And yet, because the Americans don't want to accept a nation state that's mixed with African peoples, that won't follow the American capitalist line as even having a right to exist, that they would put sanctions on them for 60 years for no just cause, while you're in bed with Russia and Bulgaria and Czechoslovakia and China. But we, African peoples, step into this thing, African Union, step into this thing in Swaziland. The king can't settle it because he started it. He can't bring justice because he's unjust and he knows it. He just didn't want to get caught at it. Well, the people have caught you now. So you can't resolve this alone. So African Union, show your worth. Show your value. Step in and act like African men and women. Don't go into Swaziland, but I'm respecting your sovereignty. To hell with the sovereignty. If the sovereignty is violating the rights of the human rights of the people, then it isn't worthy of being called a sovereign nation state. How can you be sovereign when 60% of your 60+% of your people is impoverished and you have enough wealth just in your personal bank account to handle the contradiction? So don't tell me about no sovereign state. That's not a sovereign state. That's not much bigger than my family reunion I have in South Carolina every year. Anyway, African Union, this is a chance for you to act like an African Union. African heads of states, from Nigeria, Bukhari, and the crimes you are committing with your Fulani cousins against the people of Nigeria, this is a chance for you to clean your filthy self up. I see you. Yes, I see you, Mr. Bukhari. And don't come and say salam alaikum to me. You don't represent anything Islamic. I'm Al-Hajj Amin Shahid. I stand on the principles. You don't. You rape little girls and you kidnap little girls and you murder little girls in Nigeria every day. So I'm saying, use the opportunity. Let Swaziland stir up enough stuff. If this sweet little, innocent little tiny country in the middle of South Africa can't deal with the most fundamental contradiction of poverty when it has the wealth, the rest of you ought to see you're the emperor without any clothes on. You're a bunch of naked little bandits. That's profane to the world. Yeah, I called you that because that's what you are. That's what you are. Raiding the homes of your opposition, kidnapping their wives and shooting their servants and dragging the bodies away and call yourself a sovereign state. I have no respect for you. When I left Africa, you didn't exist. There was no Nigeria when I left. There was no Cameroon when I left. There was no Ghana when I left. There was no Congo when I left. There was no Angola when I left. Okay. You didn't exist except at the hands of the enemy after the Berlin Conference in 1884. So give back to the whites of Berlin their borders. Give back to them their false sovereign nation states, which you can't do because you don't have sense enough how to organize an African kingdom again, based on the ethnicities that make up the kingdoms. And things of a less impractical given all that is. Well, is the poverty that existing all across the continent practical? Is that practical? Some of them going to hear us today, Susan. Some of them going to hear what I'm saying, and they know exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
Say, oh, you Black Americans, you can't even settle the problem in Brooklyn. I don't have to settle the problem in Brooklyn. I've settled the problem in America. We run America for the most part, and in another 50 years, we will be America.
Ashe.
And guess what? We didn't give up Africa. So you want me to bring you before the World Court and sue you? You want me to sue the 54 states for having allowed me to stay in this slavery for 400 years and not one nation have come for me and claim your children? I have not had one house of sanctuary except for my beloved Ghana. I give you Ghana. That you've opened yourself up for my sanctuary. So don't play with me. I know who I am. I know what crimes have been committed against me by both my own family and my enemies. But I will forgive the family because I understand the duress. But don't play. Don't play. Because I gave up nothing. You hold my stool for me. You hold my skin for me. You hold my land for me. And when I come for it, I want it back. As simple as that. And I've been with the devil. I know how to kill like the devil, like nobody business. Ain't nobody kill as good as Black Americans. We even kill each other. Just like the devil. You really don't want us in power in America. And we will be. In less than 100 years, there won't be enough whites here to snap your finger at. I know that sounds real odd, don't it, Susan? But it's coming. We are the only race in the world that is producing babies at a positive. Everybody else is at minus birth rate or at even birth rate. The European community across the world is producing at minus, and they'll never catch up again. And that's okay. We would treat them better than they treat us. We do that now. The point I'm making, there's no reason why what's going on in Swaziland in 2021, July, should be going on.
Correct.
Almost accept this in 1960, even in 1970s. But 2021 in July, and we can't do no better than this in resolving the problems that's leading to poverty for the masses of our people in a wealthy nation state that has access to wealth and technology on all levels if they want it. And that goes for most of the African states. Stop being afraid of white people. If you don't learn nothing else from Black Americans, you don't have to even like Black Americans. You can't take away my Africanness. That's my gene pool. But take one thing from us. We ain't scared of the European. You got it? We are not scared of them. We live in their house for 400 years. We know them better than you do. We know their good habits and their bad habits. We know their political habits and their economic habits. We know their cultural habits and their tyrannical habits. Let us teach you something about the devil you sit at a table and smile with and think you've got a friend. And you walk away from the table and you're not even wearing your own underwear when the bargaining is over. Yet you're the only one that came to the table with any resources. He came with a conversation and you went away broke. Now, I know people understand what I'm saying. That may be a little metaphor right there, right? But you understand exactly what I'm saying.
Of course, all your viewers and all your followers are people that have been following you for the past 20 years, Prof. And you see the comments when they come up. We're still going to do, I mean, this is just a distraction on the topic, not a distraction, but another thing before you leave. We need to do the part 2 of why the Black man is the most targeted in the systems. I'm saying it because, I mean, that video today has shown a lot of awakening. And I think we talked about doing the part 2 of it. We should actually plan to do that. So, yes.
I agree. And we should, because I've gotten a lot of call about that video. I haven't even watched it. So I need to watch it.
I would share it with you. I mean, we have reproduced it. But today, the 3 trendy videos or must watch and must viewed are Professor James 1, Professor James 2, Professor James 3. And, before we come down to the other scale. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that in as much as we are teaching, of course, that's your philosophy or that's your idea or that's your inspiration that brought us to this point. We have put up what we call SET. And SET is a public speaking, a training and keynote speakers for Pan-Africanism and the Africa we want. Why? Number one, Prof, we know that a lot of people are speaking, but what are they actually speaking? And we also know that speaking is teaching, right? It's not just speaking. When you're a keynote or a public speaker. So we put up an agency or a situation according to the elders, their advice, to train public speakers on Pan-Africanism. Exactly. So because a lot of events are going on, meetings are going on, seminars are going on the awakening of Africa, but who is saying what? So in order for us not to really misinform again ourselves, like you say, a lot of us are just white in black skin. What kind of ideologies are we putting out there? So this platform is almost ready. What I'm just throwing out is now Africans worldwide would have the privilege to book keynote speakers. But on the other side, they will also have the privilege to get a public speaking training skills. And this is not just about standing and being bold and not afraid of the audience, but it's about the message, about the history, about the culture. What kind of message are we? So we're reproducing the first of its kind public speaking keynote and trainings and coaching and workshops.
I think it's good.
Yes,
it's a good idea, because one of the things I'd like to see come out of that concept is multiple study groups all across the African world that's mimics what we're doing. Because this is, again, is about truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, reciprocity.
Yes.
And this only comes if you know yourself. And you can only know yourself if you know your family lineage and you know your group lineage. If you know your history, can you erase the enemy's mystery?
Correct.
It's very important to understand that phrase, because what makes your mind up determines the actions of your body. Okay? What makes up your mind determines the actions of your body. So, and even like most of our people now are Christians, I can show you how that's yours and how to use it. But the way you're using it now is like drinking poison. But I can show you how to get the poison out of Christianity. But you can't do that until you know your history, so you know what gave birth to it.
Absolute.
You know,
so
you know
true.
what gave birth to it. The same thing with Islam. You didn't pop up in the desert in a sandstorm. Muhammad studied in Africa, and he went back home with a body of wisdom that he learned in Africa. So he can call the ancestors God or the angel Gabriel or whatever, but he never lied. He let everybody know he studied in Africa. you know, and he was a black man. In the early days of Islam, the Arabs killed anybody during the Abbasid Empire who said the Prophet was black. Yet you can see in his own genealogy, the very name of his grandmother's family meant black. You know? Yes, Muslims, listen to me well, because you've been played out of pocket and think you're saying prayers 5 times a day with nothing happening in your behalf, and you still saying you're on the right path. Stop fooling yourselves. You don't even know why the 5 times a day prayer was even brought. Study the history. When the Prophet went to hide in the cave, and the surah of the cave, you read and you don't read, he sent all of his followers to Ethiopia. And when the Arab warriors came to the borders of Ethiopia to take those Muslims down, the kings of Ethiopia said, these are our brothers and our sisters who believe as we do. And they did not. They send the Arab armies running away under Abu al-As, who's the same man that would invade Egypt later under the leadership of Umar. Know the history and you'll erase the mystery.
Prof, this is also a topic that we need to talk on. I mean, we've been hearing all this disturbing on Egypt being in the African Union or taking their control. I don't know. We're still working on that topic. That would be also something to have a lecture on.
Well, we don't know. Last time I saw a map of the world, Egypt was in Africa. I don't know anybody have any issues unless they're deaf, blind, and dumb, you know.
No, Israel. No, I think it's not Egypt. I'm talking about Israel.
Israel is in Africa. All right. Yeah. That whole piece of land that's called the Middle East is geologically and geographically Africa. Mm-hmm. There's no Middle West. There's no Middle South. And there's no Middle North. So how do we get a Middle East? What's that about? That's when you want to steal a piece of somebody's land because you want to give some basis and roots to a history that you falsely claim. You see? And you just pretend it ain't Africa. But I'm not stupid. I'm not going to pretend Africa is not Africa. Mm. And even though I'm brown, brown ain't nothing but a shade of black. You know what I'm saying? I'm African. Okay? And so I understand and know that. I don't need to even have a discussion of that or qualify that or say anything about that. What we need to understand and be clear on is to own what's ours. But I'm not hung up on the Hebrew thing or the Christian thing or none of those things, because none of them existed until a couple of thousand years ago. Those are babies. Those are infants' interpretation of our understanding of divinity. Okay? We existed for millions of years. So if there was an Adam and Eve, the Adam and Eve story is millions of years older than the Hebrew tradition or the Christian tradition. So stop playing. You can't send me to college to study anthropology and paleontology and archaeology and tell me humans have lived for millions of years and then tell me Adam and Eve came a few thousand years ago in the bush somewhere in the desert of Saudi Arabia. Stop it. It's just child's play. It's fairy tales. It's foolishness. I understand why it's put together, but when it comes to you justifying your owning and controlling my African land based on your fairy tales and your foolishness, then I'm not obligated to respect anything you're talking about. Is that clear?
Clear.
Okay.
Yes.
And I can read the literature in Hebrew, and I know the word Adam simply means earth, E-A-R-T-H. Okay. So you want to play with metaphor versus linguistic and science? We could do that. But I say study history and get rid of the Europeans' mystery so we can have the better relationship as Africans again and interpreting our past so we can better plan our future around food, clothing, shelter, safety, security, controlling economic, politics, and culture, land, labor, and resources where we live.
Great. Super. Perfect. There's no better way to put it. Of course, you say study your history. It's going to erase your history. That's the first professional quote from Professor James Small, but then we have to study the history with Professor James Small, because I mean, there's a lot of history out there, but the way you put it, it's not just the way you put it, it's the love that you surround that history with that makes it very, very unique. Even if we would have to listen, we know other historians and stuff, but the way you cook this thing and wrap it in the bottle, you know, in the bundle of palm, you know, of coconuts or banana leaves.
We're
Wow.
cooking it in palm oil and cola nuts, and we make the
Yes.
fire with banana leaves. What are we cooking? We're cooking the ancestors, because that's who we are. We are our ancestors. Get that, people. That's not a cliche. That's not a phraseology. We are our ancestors. If you really get that, then you will understand anything else.
Yes.
But that's a key part of understanding reality. There's nothing in the universe that isn't in the human body. Every element, every mineral that makes up the rest of nature makes up you. So the zinc in me salutes the zinc in you. The iron in me salutes the iron in you. The manganese and gold in me salutes the manganese and gold in you. So the rhythm and vibration of your gold and manganese finds some relationship to the rhythm and vibration of the gold and manganese that is in me. And on and on. I am nature in miniature. I am the cosmology in miniature. In Africa, look, any African tradition, speak to any African language, and their word for God says that God is every and all things at once. The totality of creation is divinity. Now, you can give it any face you want. You can give it any name you want. You can call it Amun-Ra, Allah, Yahovah, Jesus, or whatever. You're still talking about the totality of creation itself as divinity. What the white man calls science is African spirituality in white face. Let me say that again. People will wake you up with a little deep stuff.
Please don't shut me down again. I mean, you see, even the public is saying Susan is looking confused. Always. I mean, I'm always speechless when you hear course.
Making it plain. What the European calls science is nothing but African spirituality in white face. Do you hear me?
Yes.
That's why you got, you know that term, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So when we try to deal with the filth of European behavior, don't confuse that of your ancestors that he's stolen through Plato and Aristotle and Anaximenes and all of those others who copied our library and took it to Greece. And then when the Arabs came, who were the bastardized children of the Greeks and the Romans, yes, that's who you are. You're the bastardized children of the Greek and Romans who raped the Black people of the so-called Middle East and produced you. And you chose the side of your rapist father, philosophically and ideologically. And then you came and raided our libraries, and you took the books to Europe, and you taught them and helped them open universities using our science and our technology and our papyrus with all of our medical books. And now you come back with my knowledge that you have plagiarized, copied, and improvised on, and tell me about your science. Go to hell. I know who I am. I know who you are. I know what's mine, and I know what you don't have to call yours. Okay? Now, I know that was said simply and clearly. And it's not meant to be joking. I'm going to say it again. What Europeans call science is nothing more than stolen African spiritual sacred science in white face. If you read Plato, and I know this is a long way from Swaziland, but it's again about knowing your history and knowing your place and knowing your true lineage. Plato wrote a piece called Phaedrus. Sometimes they call it the Phaedra. And in the book Phaedrus, he said the Ethiopians, because the Ethiopian is not an African word, it's a Greek word. It means burnt face or baked in the sun. And they weren't referring to the place we call Ethiopia today, which is the old Aksum Empire of yesterday. They were referring to the whole continent as Ethiopia. And so Plato in his Phaedrus says that Ethiopia has given the world all of its sciences. And he said the greatest science it's given is arithmetic and geometry and medicine. And he goes on. But he said the greatest science of all that Ethiopia has given to the world. This is Plato. This is their big boy right here, right? He said the greatest science of all that we've given to the world is the science of writing itself. So why don't they teach us that in the university? You've never heard it. None of you have ever heard of Phaedrus. Yet you can go online and look up the Phaedrus, P-H-E-D-R-U-A or P-H-E-D-R-I-S, Phaedrus. But once you put part of the word in with Plato, the book will come up, and it takes some reading to find the little pieces that I quote from. But then you go to the Ryan Mathematic Papyrus, right? And the Ryan Mathematic Papyrus is a papyrus, a mathematical book from Africa, which sits in the British Museum, off in a corner, almost undistinct by itself, just below the Nubian exhibit in the British Museum. Yeah, I've been there and I've seen it. And they don't even tell you what that is on the wall. It is a mathematic book. And it has a problem. The 16th problem is the Pythagorean theorem, except it's 2,000 years older than Pythagoras. So tell me, how could Pythagoras have a theorem that's 2,000 years older than himself? Written by Africans. And the white man got it in his museum and still teaches the lies and the craps that he teaches to us. Know your history and you'll erase their mystery.
Whew. Now we're starting the history class. I can. Yes, I know.
Well, I went all the way there to say that the discussion in Swaziland is capable of being handled within the next 24 hours.
Correct.
If our leadership from the African Union to the other heads of states around Swaziland have the audacity as African human beings to step forward without asking for an invitation, because no sovereignty can be respected if the human rights of the people have been violated. You will do basic courtesy and protocol because that's the nature of being African. But don't tell me about sovereignty when the sovereign is suffering.
The period of truth, the era of truth is here. Yes. So anything that has been sitting under decades, 35 years of monarch, 3 decades of ruling, is just coming out. All the lies that have been covered. I said it, 2020. Every lie, whether relationships, countries, everything is coming to truth, because this is the decade of truth and justice. You can't run away from it. It will meet you.
Right.
It's
but
time.
The truth must have a vessel, and the vessel must be African youth.
Yes.
African males and females, human beings. We have to carry the truth. We have to implement the truth. It's not going to float on the air. We are the hands of God. There's no God. No one can describe a God that came down here and did anything. Anything godly that we refer to was done by men and women, because we are that aspect of God that brings justice to the environment that we inhabit. And if we don't understand that, we'll pray till the cow come home and all you're going to get is beef stew. You get it? Did you get the cow coming home beef stew part? You bring a cow home and you kill it and cut it up, you can make beef stew, and that's all you get. You see? But if you act out truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity in your daily actions, then you get justice. We are in the hands of God.
We are. Truly. And I think that, yes, it's also, like you said, Prof, we're in the time in the hands of God. And that's why God is exposing all these lies, all these hidden manipulations and agendas that have been going on. People being silent for all that why God let it to happen. But when the time comes, like now, then it's the time. The people will rise up. It's the voice of the God. And everything that has been under this cover, it's just coming out. So it's also a very good thing to say that the people of Swaziland had to stand up, or Iswani or whatever, on under this decade of living, and being choked up. The time just came when Lord say, or God, the creator of our ancestors, say, no, no more, no more.
It's the time is up. It's time for people to be free. It is freedom or death. Why would I live my whole life in poverty, in pain, being abused, being misused, just to die and be put in the ground? No.
Yes.
If I'm going to be in that ground one day, then let me enjoy the fruits of this earth while I live. And if you try to take it away from me, I will take you away from you. And that's not being rude. That's being fair. That's being just. You disagree with me, Miss Susan?
I can never disagree. How come? Am I in my right senses? I mean, I'm just, you can see,
Well,
I'm
I'm
like,
going to
I
tell
don't know whether
you.
I want to touch everything in this studio, or I want to start up and dance, or I want to start up.
Well,
Naisha has been
let me
posting.
tell you who we want to bring into our class to
Yes.
come and teach us. Do you know Chinwezu?
Chinwezu, yes.
Well, that's my little brother. So I want Chinwezu on this show with me and you one day soon.
Do we have his contact? I mean, of course, he's coming through you.
Of course I do.
Sure.
We just spoke at the Panafest this week. He delivered a speech to the youth at the Panafest, talking about the future of the youth in Africa.
Oh, were you at the Panafest? Anyway, I'm going to have Brother Asukele, because I signed into the conference, but my network was just, he sent the link and I logged in, particularly when Dr. Jeffries and the wife was to make a speech, and my link just blew off.
Okay. No, I'll try to get the recordings for you from
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. We
want to have. I think we have so many African scholarships that we don't read out to, and Chinwezu happened to be one that I love dearly. But he's my brother; he's a comrade, and I would love for the world to be hearing more of him.
Oh, thank you so much. I follow him. We've dreamed. Naisha has fought to get him. It's very impossible. But now that you're bringing it into the family, Bayete.
Right, Chinwezu, I hope you hear me. I'm calling you. I'm calling Nana Kwabena and Ketsia. I want to see you on Susan Tata's show. Yes. I don't want to have no excuse. You got the wisdom of Africa in you. And there are other great scholarships on that continent, both in East Africa, Central South Africa, that we need to bring to this platform to just teach our people. The people will listen if we teach them the truth. We're not trying to give them any false ideology. I don't care about ideology. We're trying to give them access to themselves. That's all. Access to themselves. To learn to love one another, whether you're blue, black, or caramel brown, or your hair is kinky or curly or short or long, or you live in Somalia or Ethiopia, or you live in Ghana or Congo. Know that you're Africans. Know that you're one. Whether you're in Brazil, Jamaica, Haiti, the United States or Canada, Germany or France or Italy, the Africans should come together as Africans. If we do, we'll be the largest racial group in the planet Earth, nearly 3 billion people. And if we bring our resources together with a common sense that is African, no one will dare abuse us, misuse us, or discriminate against us. If you want what we have, you will come in partnership with honesty. Because all your guns in the world don't mean nothing when I decide to fight back. When I decide to rise up, your guns mean nothing. Your technology means nothing. But then you at that point will mean nothing. But it doesn't have to go there. Let's find ourselves. Let's find ourselves as Africans and change the world, because the world needs to be changed desperately for the sake of the people and the poverty that they suffer, that they shouldn't have to suffer. So that we can teach them love and learn that love is not sex, that love is understanding the essence of the divine that is you, and recognizing the essence of the divine in other people, and then finding a bonding with that. You know, and that's an African way of being. You know, that is the African way of being.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
We beg the people of South Africa, and we beg the people of Burundi,
yes,
to help the people of Swaziland to come to some kind of accord, stop killing your own people, and get your people out of poverty, so you can be a model and example for the future. Because none of us is going to be here. We're talking today, 60, 70 years from now, not one of us will be here.
Yes.
So this cannot be about us. It cannot be about us. I'm already 76 years. So in a few more years, I'm no more. Except in the minds of those who have understood me while I was here.
You're here and you'll be here forever. You know it. I mean, you just
We are all eternal. We are all eternal. Our oldest ancestor is the divine creator itself.
Ashe.
So we are eternal. So
this is your legacy that you're living, and we will preserve it. But who knows who even go before? Probably you'll be the one then hosting when we also go. So we thank you so much, Prof. We can't get enough of you. I mean, like, I just wrote Joshua, who King Maponga, whom we had to do the show tomorrow, and I said we'll be doing it on Tuesday, because you know, from our traditional culture, when something comes up like this and we talk, we sleep two nights over it, and so we don't put another show on it.
Yeah, and tell King Mapongo he's obligated, even though the Swazis and the Zulus have had a history of war. That was just misunderstanding between brothers. Right now, the people of Swazi is in trouble, and the Zulu nation needs to step up to the plate to try and help them resolve this contradiction. They're your next door neighbors.
Ashe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. All of us have to digest into the weekend. You've made our weekend. You've made everything. You've given us every reason. I'm just here. My jaws would explode from too much smiling. I mean, I was heavy-hearted. I've been thinking, what are we going to have as a solution to do? We've been reaching out, calling people on the continent, and like, what is really going on? But when we had you on this topic, and today you're just uplifting our heart. So I also want to thank you so very much, but I'm particularly also thanking the people on the continent in Swaziland, be them in South Africa or in Rwanda or in Nigeria or Cameroon or wherever, or in the diaspora, that it is just the moment that our time is now. How much more would we say this? Every signs, every symbols, everything. We're sitting here talking to each other. None of us has seen us, because we're spiritual beings. We connect and we just understand. So we thank every voice, every person that even took their risk to say, I don't care what does a bullet even mean for me when I can feed myself. I mean, some even just went out deliberately to say, you know what, I just want to die on the street, but I want to die for something. So the poverty rate, like Professor James is saying in Botswana, is crazy. It is rated the highest in the world, in a small, beautiful space that has everything that it ought to be, the role model. And we're thinking that this escalation is a symbolic point, turning point, where the monarch or the leaders on the continent, particularly Swaziland, would take that responsibility to make things right. We trust your governance, like Professor James is saying. We trust that turnover among all of us. None of us is would get there without making these mistakes. But it is not about making the mistakes, it's the turnaround from the mistakes that makes the difference. So yes, we are calling on you. You have all our support in any way that you want for us to make things right, for us to be in that harmony. We're not only talking or pointing out the mistakes, but we also have the tools and the instrument to give you all the support that you need. Do you need a mediation? Do you need us to step in terms of peace? And come on, you know what? I've been also nominated a Global Peace Ambassador. Yes, Professor James Moore. So we can step in when we say in the name of peace. I'm talking about, just anyhow that we can help. We can help. We are ready. So we want to thank all of you, all your support. And how much more can I say, Prof? One last word. Just give us one sweet one to take along for the weekend.
Well, this is about.
Did I tell you that you look so handsome?
This is about Pan-Africanism. It's Pan-Africanism or perish.
Yes.
Dr. John Henry Clark gave us that. He said Pan-Africanism or perish. And somehow we have to get that word to all of our people. So this xenophobic behavior that some of us display coming out of our European colonial culture, that if a brother from anywhere in Africa is in need, then we are in need. And if we have one piece of bread and there's 10 people there in need, then everybody should eat a little tiny piece of that bread. Okay? Anything short of that is not African. It is Pan-Africanism or perish.
Yes.
Because the rest of the world, the Chinese, the Brits, the Americans, the Canadians, the Italians, the Indians, the Arabs, they're not coming to Africa to see us grow. They're not coming to see us thrive. They're not coming to build our hospitals and our health facilities. They're not coming to build clean sewage systems. They're coming to exploit us, and whatever we suffer, we suffer. They don't care. And they've proven that between 1885 and the Berlin Conference to now. And we should always remember the Berlin Conference to now. That should be the anchor that we look at when they came for us. And they had all of this time with all of our wealth to do us a good deed, and they have not done it. So it's Pan-Africanism or perish. We have no choice. Pan-Africanism or perish. Dr. John Henry Clark told us that. And he's one of our great fathers. One of my great, great fathers.
Pan-Africanism or perish.
Yes. We have no choice. So we are already the Africa we want to see. Let's just implement it. All of the African youth across the continent, all of those beautiful babies who gave their lives in Swaziland in the last few days.
Oh.
We're the ones who are shot up and are in the hospital. We love you. We love you. And I hope somebody tells you they saw this.
Yes.
And we're telling you that we love you.
Yes.
And that you're courageous and that you're revolutionary. And that we will know you in history. We will not forget you. We will not forget that you gave your beautiful young life. We will not forget you. And that's why it has to be Pan-Africanism or perish. And that's why we're telling those leaders, please do the right thing. Do it quickly. That's all we need to say on that. Do the right thing, or do it quickly, or you may see the spirit of the ancestors in your bedroom, and they won't recognize you as family, and you certainly won't recognize them. There's some that understand what I'm saying.
We do.
Clear. Yeah, that's clear enough. So, my beloved, I'm going to let you close down.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. But you closed it already. There's nothing more to say. Pan-Africanism or perish is the key word that we're taking into our weekend. And I wish all of you out there also a happy time, no matter where we are. Just remember only this Pan-Africanism. There's no you without me. And we started doing some exercises. Any one of us that you see on the streets in any place that needs help, that is in any condition, please don't walk by turning your face. These are all attitudes also that we've learned. Sometimes we see people in a desperate place on the street or doing some things and we just walk by like we're not us anymore. Lend a hand, give a look, give a smile, ask if there's something you can do, or just greet and smile and walk by. That is Pan-Africanism or perish. The moment we throw our eyes away, we're dead. That's the perishness. Yeah.
And
You want me
so,
to take this call? I think this must be for you, Prof.
okay.
Okay. Can you call using the WhatsApp number? Because you just called direct, and if I pick it, it's just going to go off. If you can call using the WhatsApp number, you have it. You've been calling each time Prof is here. I see your number. So that would be it. Like we're saying, we take the spirit of oneness, of unity, and we know that's the best place to be. The best place for any African, the best job for any African on this planet now is just to serve your people. That's the best job ever. That brings you everything that you need. And don't expect any payment for that job.
No,
don't expect it. Just
job.
Do it and be free.
That's true freedom. Remember what we said when we first started? Freedom is being shackled to your identity.
Correct.
True freedom is being shackled to your identity. When you do that, you don't worry about anything. Nothing.
Illusions.
No.
Erasing the mystery. All right. Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Anitata.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yes. It's a wonderful thing to be speaking to the great elder.
It is, my brother. It is. How are you? Are you calling from South Africa or Swaziland?
I'm calling from South Africa.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay, my brother. Well, Swaziland.
Things, elder.
Yes, sir.
I remember Dr. Johnny Hendrik Clark. You were saying that he only debates with his equals. He doesn't, the rest he teaches, So it's an honor to be speaking to one of the equals of Dr. Johnny Hendrik Clark.
Ashe. Bayete. Thank you.
I have a couple of things that I want to suggest. When it comes to our leadership in Africa, like there are people in Nigeria who lived a society where there was no one singular leader, It was the collective that ruled. And when the British wanted to conquer them, they had to enforce this thing of chieftainship in order to be able to corrupt them, to steal our resources, to get access to organizing society. So this thing of chieftaincy, our form of leadership as Africans, we must question these systems and we must come up with our own. And some way, I like open source, an open source system. Like what you're talking about, the teaching, the training. I believe it should be done based on therapy. With revolutionary psychology, Pan-Africanistic revolutionary psychology.
That is the
because
point.
A lot of our leadership, you see, there's a lot of lack of knowledge of self. Elder, I want to tell you that as Black Americans, as African Americans, I love you. You are my ancestors. You were stolen from me. We Africans, we the people, we the ordinary people, not these white supremacy imposed misleaders that are called chiefs or whatever that sold our brothers and sisters. We could not sell our own aunties. We could not sell our brothers, our cousins, our blood.
Right.
You know, some of them were teachers. They were architects. They were engineers. They were the foundation of our society. We could not sell you as Africans. So that narrative, we must control the narrative. We must own our narrative. We Africans did not sell each other. There were more Africans that died from fighting against colonialism, using spears and bows and arrows against guns in order to try and rescue our brothers and sisters, our cousins, our aunties.
And I agree with you 100%. And I do full lectures on that. My harshness sometimes is to that leadership to stop playing, because part of how people know themselves is through the leadership demonstrating the relationship. You know, borders.
Yes, but the problem is a lot of leaders don't have knowledge of self.
Right.
There's a lack of knowledge of self. I've learned more African history from you, African Americans, Dr. John Henry Clark, Ivan Van Setima, of course others, or Sheikata Diop from Africa, but a lot of African knowledge, African history that I know is through you and not through our leaders. A lot of them do not know their own history.
Exactly.
And that's part of the weakness. Right. Well, that's part of the weakness we're speaking to, that you must get your history to get rid of the enemy's mystery. And we have our people in leadership that don't have a clue. The general masses are much more educated than the people who are ruling over them. And that's why we have this situation in Swaziland. You would think someone who's been to universities, traveled the world, would have an understanding of how to love yourself. And they don't have a clue, you know. But the people will unite. It's up to us. It's up to the people to own themselves, to own one another, you know.
Talking about that unity, I love the story of Marcus Garvey and the Black Starliner, the Universal Negro Improvement. That story and that strategy, I love it. And, you know, I want to suggest, Elder, as an elder, a lot of people can listen to you. So for me, I want us to develop a collective group economics culture. It must be a culture, especially Pan-Africanism. For you to be a Pan-Africanist, an international Africanist, you must at least, let's just make it 1 unit of every currency, because maybe $1 is a standard for international. Sometimes people here in Africa are struggling too much, but the thing is, all we need is collective group economic raising of capital, such that it becomes a culture. So that right now, if we could say each and everyone just gives into one account of one organization that is driving our culture and our vision as Pan-Africanists internationally, that we just need $1 or R1 or whatever. Make it an automatic thing that comes straight from the account, you know, into that one account, that one international account. And we drive this thing that we are talking about right now, like the training. For me, I actually say it must be a Pan-Africanist international internet university, an indigenous knowledge system, open source university. Each one teach one, Marcus Garvey philosophy, such that me, as an expert artist, that is my career, that is what I do. I do a lot of things, drawing, paintings, sculptures. You know, I want to do sculptures of all my superheroes, Marcus Garvey, you know, Dr. John Henry Clark. So if you can organize nice photos for me of these great ancestors, I can give you these things. They are artworks molded into sculptures.
Well, okay, noted.
And then one thing, you being an elder, I would have loved to have spoken to Dr. John Henry Clark, but he's not here. You are here and you are speaking the same speech that he spoke, which means you are a living ancestor that can manage to pass on this knowledge in a eternal way. So me being an artist, I do filmmaking, I do animation, I do send that. I was actually performing at the National Art Festival in South Africa online. I will give you links for you to see my work. But part of what I do is also animation using this send art.
Okay.
Let me, because we don't want to take up time that others might want. I think your point is well made. So I'll ask Sister Susan to send my email to your number, to your WhatsApp. And that way you'll be in touch with me.
Okay. Right.
That is lovely. That is lovely.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you. And peace out there. Please reach out to your brothers and sisters in Swaziland. Okay. Those that need help in any way possible. Please.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, it's true.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Good. Thank you. That was a quick one. Thank you so much, Prof. I think it's been long when everyone wants to talk to you. So yes, as I said, we see ourselves on Tuesday with Joshua Maponga, and yeah, we wish you all the best and the family, and Pan-Africanism or we perish.
Pan-Africanism or we perish.
Yes, and I'm inviting all of you to stay a little bit patient and watch our new, those that are coming in late. We put out our iconic image video. It's been trending also on YouTube, but we actually now put it like the opening and the closing, so you can see even our able professor sitting there, and to get us into the weekend in a Pan-African dancing mood, right? Next time I'm gonna dress like Professor James Moore. I'm working on that. The red, the black.
Oh no, you're dressed like the goddess Oya.
Yes, with the goddess Oya on it.
And Oya represents change and process in the human personality, as well as change in the human environment.
Beautiful. So all of you are viewers on the continent in the diaspora. We wish you a very happy weekend. We see ourselves again on Tuesday. If anything changes, we're going to inform you. If we have to come suddenly on Sunday or whatever happens, according to the calling of our ancestors. Remember, our work, we are not a mainstream media that has, when something comes up, they call us to action. And so we also. So what we do is to send out that voice, to drum it like we used to do in the village. You just need to click and subscribe so that when we come up, when something is happening around the village and we're calling, you should be notified. That's the way we act. That's the way our ancestors acted. We didn't need to say, okay, I have to send all these flyers. Please just click the notification bell and subscribe. So each time when we spontaneously come on, we don't need to warn you. We don't need to tell you. When there's fire on the mountain, like in Estonia, then you just see us come live. Then you know something is happening. Gather around and we put our heads together and make it work. We have to come back to our senses. We have to come back to the village way of doing things. We have to be on the watch. But I also want to thank my sister Kalena from the UK. It's been a long time, sister. I see you again being active here. I think you traveled, but now you're back. Thank you so much. We're also looking forward for Koboko Souls, who was not here for all this while. I think she also traveled to Africa, but I hear she's around. So blessings to all of you, the family, and we see ourselves next week, God willing. Thank you, Prof. We catch up on the show in the Black Room. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.